Welcome, listeners, to A Writer's Life. I'm your host, Heike Bohm, the author of the novel Secrets in the Shadows. A Writer's Life is a place where I'll be in conversation with fellow writers. We'll discuss all things writing. They'll read from their latest works, and we'll explore what happens beyond the pen in A Writer's Life. It's gonna be a page turner. I just know it. Pull up a chair and join us. I'm recording on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of A Writer's Life. I'm looking forward to a conversation with R.C. Weslowski, who is the author of My Soft Response to the Wars, his debut poetry collection with writer Bloody North Publishing. R.C. is also a broadcaster, a podcaster, voice actor, and clown, plus co-founder and artistic director of Hullabaloo, BC's Youth Spoken Word Festival. R.C. is the 2016 recipient of the Sheri-D Wilson Golden Beret Award and former Poet of Honor for both the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word and the Victoria Spoken Word Festival. R.C. is also co-founder of Mashed Poetics, a spoken word and music mashup event that recently celebrated its 50th event since 2009. R.C. is also co-host of Wax Poetic on Co-op Radio, a radio program dedicated to poetry and poetic pursuits. Welcome, R.C., to A Writer's Life.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. It's fun. I haven't done, actually, I don't know if I've been on any podcasts, like interviewed on a podcast before. So thank you for welcoming me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming on. Where were you born, and what was it like around your dinner table when you were growing up?
I was born in Abbotsford, British Columbia, which I've learned it was the original, and still is, I guess, historically, the Semeth peoples. What it was like around my dinner table, oh my gosh, chaos at times. But there was also a lot of humor from my brother and my sisters. One thing we always talk about is when my dad, he had a bit of a temper, and at dinner time, he'd have the news on the television, and he'd be reading the newspaper at the same time. So he'd be doing that, and then the kids, we'd be, getting into trouble, joking around and start laughing and start making noise, and then he'd just go, "Stop it! I'm trying to watch the news," and he's still staring at his newspaper. And so this was a thing that we always remembered. But we were always together, even if it was chaotic and there was some tension and whatnot. We were always together, though, too. So there was that.
Nice. What books were your favorite when you were a child?
Well, it depends. I mean, I grew up heavily influenced by comic books, and I still collect them to this day as a hobby and as a pursuit. So they were very influential to me. But as far as reading, I mean, I remember one thing my dad and I shared was the love of Louis L'Amour Westerns. And it was like one of the few things that we could connect with. We would read these books, and then he would say, "Oh, read this one," or I'd read one and say, "Read this one." And so that was a thing we could connect over. When I was really a lot younger, it'd be like Hardy Boy books, Roald Dahl, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, that kind of thing. And then I got quite into science fiction for my teenage years. And the book that really resonated for me for quite some time was by Harlan Ellison. And it was a short story anthology called "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream." And so it was very angsty, and that fit right into and angry, and it fit right into my temperament at that time. But a brilliant book at the time.
What inspired you to become a clown?
It was sort of by accident that I started studying. I was going to the William Davis School of Acting. And one of the teachers there, David McMurray Smith, was our movement teacher. And he mentioned in one of the classes that he also taught clown. And I found that quite intriguing. I had no idea what that meant or what it was all about, but I really liked David as an instructor. And so I thought, okay, let's try this. Let's go do this. And it was both probably at that time the most challenging creative thing that I'd ever done, and also the most transformative for me anyway. So what I like about clown is that for me, and I think this is common, but I think it's that both the audience and the performer are equal participants in the event that's happening. In my mind, it's not about sitting back and watching someone on stage and just being, ooh, that's impressive and that's interesting, blah, 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 blah. It's more that some of that's happening, but the clown, the performer, is hopefully aware enough to recognize what's happening in the audience as well, and then taking that information and then giving it back to them. And then there's this conversation, this live conversation that's happening without the fourth wall. Because there's often that happening, when you're going to see a band play live, there's a conversation happening between them and the audience, and any sort of live performance that does happen. But I think with clown, the fourth wall is removed a lot of the time. And so it to me, it just brings it's so much more alive, and mistakes are good. You acknowledge them and then you play with them. And so I find it a lot of fun that way.
Mm. You had said that it was transformative for you. How so?
Mm-hmm. I was really closed up, really emotionally locked down. But there was a voice inside me that I fought with for a long time, like in the sense of denying it, self-harm, accepting that part of myself, because I didn't think I was worthwhile. And I didn't think that voice had any validity to speak in the world. Clown started opening up those doors that allowed me to begin to find what people say their voice is and all that sort of stuff, and their point of view, and embrace the weirdness and the silliness and the absurdity that is life. Recognize it. And there's a phrase that was always mentioned, that David mentioned, that I think a friend of his, Charles Smith, told him, a childhood friend of his, that said, if you can't laugh at yourself, you're missing out on the biggest joke that there is. And that sort of always informs me time and time again, if I start taking myself too seriously, and if I start getting a little tighter as well, in my own skin.
What came first, clown or poetry?
I think clown, probably, in my adult life. I mean, I always wrote stuff, growing up and whatnot. But I think once I started, clown. I tried writing this poem called "Poetry Killed My Clown," because I felt like when I was starting out in poetry, I was participating in poetry slams, and which I loved and still do. I have a great fondness for them. But there was a part of it, it's so strict in a way. You've got 3 minutes maximum to perform, and you can't use props or costumes. And at that time, I hadn't yet figured out, or was still trying to figure out, how to incorporate clown into a poetry performance. And so I felt it restrictive at times, but I was addicted to it in a way, to the poetry slam. So anyway, that was a joke for myself that, poetry tried to kill my clown.
Had you always known you wanted to be a writer?
I don't know if I'd always known it, but again, that was something that I had done throughout my childhood, scribbling, journaling. I was, journaling when I was probably 12, 13 years old. And, and then I would read a book, and then try and write like that, what I read, and was horrible. And so I didn't really pursue it at all until later in the early 90s. So I was probably in my late 20s. And took one creative writing class, night school class at UBC, and And that was good. And I think it just, that made me think, oh, I guess I can just keep trying. So I just kept trying and kept trying. I mean, one of the things I feel like about me is that I just stuck it out. I was stubborn and I kept going, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. And to some degree, I'm self-taught in the sense of like, I'd read stuff, but I don't know how to analyze something other than, if it hits me and go, wow, that feels really good, or something like that. But I couldn't tell you why it did, or, like academically, I probably couldn't tell you why it did.
I remember taking my first writing workshop. It was learning how to do screenplays. And I had never taken any writing course. I didn't know really much about it. And PJ Reese was teaching it, and he kept talking about a protagonist. And I thought, what on earth is a protagonist? It sounds like a cheese. Is it a cheese? So I get that not knowing, but like you, I just kind of kept at it and figured it out, and joined a class. And what was your first piece that you had published?
I don't know what it was. Oh no, what the heck was it called? It was in the whatever the Langara student anthology was or something. I submitted something. They had an open call, and it got published. Oh shoot, I can't remember what it was called. But it was angsty, and it was and probably not lacking much skill, but it was honest. And so, and what I remember is like going back to like feeling closed off and all that sort of stuff. I remember when I got the announcement in the mail saying that they had accepted the poem and they were going to publish it. I had this moment. I was like, yes. And I kind of just punched it. And then I caught myself right away. I was like, did anybody see that? Did anybody see this exuberance and this joy that I had? Because, I was always told not to feel that or do that. Well, who are you to be happy? Who are you to do this and do that sort of thing? That was the voice all the time. And, but that was, I remember that.
I had a letter published in Harper magazine. I read this article and it pissed me off. So I just responded, but never thinking anything was going to come of it. And then I got this email. I was like, oh my God, that is so exciting. And nice. So when it came out, I went to London Drugs and I picked up the magazine. And one of my little fantasies was to point at something I had published to a complete stranger. So there's this guy standing there, and I open the magazine. I go, "Hey, guess what?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I go, "That's me. Look, that's my name."
Nice. Well, that reminds me then, I think the very first thing I ever got published was a letter to the editor. I wrote one of the comic books I was reading, I think Weird Western Tales. And I was just like, I really like your story, and I think I'd like to write a comic book one day. Thank you, Randy Jacobs. And they published it. So that would be the very first thing I had published.
Oh, that's great. I like that. So are you going to write a graphic novel?
I think about that, I would like to. I've got a bunch of children's poems.
Oh, nice.
That I think that I've always just kept in the background, and I think would be really good illustrated. And it's called Monkey Pudding, and it's probably like 10 or so different poems based on that theme of monkey pudding, and it's just silly and nonsensical, but very imagistic. And so I think some of those would fit into a collection, if not a graphic novel per se, but definitely comic book form.
Nice. You are the artistic director of Hullabaloo and co-founder of MASH Poetics and a co-host for Wax Poetic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Hullabaloo is a youth spoken word festival that was independent when we first started for the first 3 or 4 years. And then we teamed up with Vancouver Poetry House and became part of the Verses Festival, at the time I think it was the West Coast Poetry, or the VIP Festival. So then we've now been partnered with the Verses Festival of Words with Vancouver Poetry House for probably 7 or 8 years now. And it's a high school poetry festival that uses poetry slam as the main focus to get the kids engaged. but we also have workshops, feature performances by other people. So we try to make it a educational thing as well, and we have coaching for them. So I'm part of Vancouver Poetry House as well, or I have been. I'm an employee of them, but I helped found that back in 2005. And there's a program called Wordplay, which is putting spoken word poets primarily into schools to help do workshops. And part of Hullabaloo is that the teams get poets from Wordplay to go to their school and coach them on their performances. So that's what Hullabaloo is. If anybody wants to go check it out online, youthslam.ca is the website for that. Mash Poetics is a love of mine, a poetry show that I do with Trevana Spilchin. And we just had our 50th show. We do it quarterly. And so it's 4 years. And although we've done a few more, because we occasionally perform it in festivals. So we've done it under 12 years. So it's like 11 years or 10 and a half years we've done it. It's a poetry and music mashup. So we pick a record album, and then I get poets to write one new poem based on one of the songs on the album. I assign the songs, and then they create that work. And we have a live band, usually, performing that. And then the poets perform in between the songs. Side A is always the song first and then the poem. And side B begins with the poem and then the song. So the show begins and ends with music. Probably classic rock is probably a recurring genre, but we've done lots of pop. We've done some hip hop, country, blues, and it's been a real treat to do this. Our 50th show, we repeated our very first album. It was Black Sabbath's Paranoid album. So we did that for our 50th show, and we were lucky enough to get the Presentation House Theater team to live stream it on Vimeo, because we couldn't have anybody in the space to watch it, but they do this live streaming thing. So they are, COVID ready enough that you can put a band in there and myself as the host. It was great. It was so nice because that was the first time we'd done it with the band since COVID had started, because we've been doing the shows online, but it's just been Trevana, our musical leader, our band leader, doing stuff solo by themselves on their guitar primarily and singing. It's nice to have the band back together again. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube under Mashed Poetics if people want to see the band and some of the poems. I've got a poem or two in this book that has been inspired, that I wrote at one of our Mashed Poetic shows. And Trevana always says that it's nice to see when people who've taken the poem that they wrote for Mashed Poetics and, gotten it published somewhere. Fran Barassa was one of our poets way back, and she won the Vancouver Writers Festival New Poem Award, or I can't remember the name of the award, but using their Mashed Poetics piece. So we were really always thrilled when people would manage to get their poems out in the world and not just have it at the show. Wax Poetic is a co-op radio show that I've been co-hosting since I think 2001, and we've gone through many incarnations of co-hosts. I was invited at the beginning. S.R. Duncan and Diane Laloge were the hosts at the time, and Steve S.R. Invited me to be on the show. I said, yeah, sure, because I worked in radio and I still work in radio. Yeah, so I started doing that, and then they left. And then I had to try and gather people to be co-hosts for me, and some stayed for a little longer and others died and some moved away and that sort of thing. So now we've got a really good mix, I think, of people, like 6 or 7. So we've got a nice collective so that people can pop in and out, and we don't have to rely on the same people every time, except I'm doing it every time because we're recording it right now, and we put it up online rather than doing it live in the studio at Co-op, because they're closed for COVID.
Right.
So that show it's on Co-op Radio, which is 100.5 FM, and it runs every Wednesday afternoon, 2 to 2:30. I don't know when this is going to air, but we just had today Jen Sukfong Lee, their debut collection of poetry. They've got a few novels and kids' books and stuff out, but it's called The Shadow List, and it's brilliant. It's so good. I love it. I probably read half of it so far. It's fantastic.
Nice. When you were talking about bringing it to students in school, and you've been running that program for quite some time. Have you seen a change in how many kids partake in it compared to when you first started and now?
In Hullabaloo, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we started out with 4 teams, which would be a minimum of, at the time, of 4 people. So we'd have like a minimum of 6, probably 20 kids at that very first one. And now we plan for 16 teams of a minimum of 3 to 6. So we've usually got like around 100 kids participating and taking part, performing and going to the workshops. And then we also do this show called the All-Star Slam, which is part of the festival. And we get 3, pro poetry slammers or spoken word artists, and we do this mock poetry slam where we're giving out scores, but the scores aren't the point. Well, they're never the point really, but they aren't the point specifically in this one. And it's kind of they do the poems, and it's very silly in the scoring and all that sort of stuff. What's your favorite hat? Oh, that's a bowl, and that's how you would score, or something silly like that. And that show regularly, we sell it to schools to come, and we're getting, like 450, 500 kids coming to these shows. Again, this would be mostly middle school to high school kids, grades 9 to 12.
Good for you guys. That's great. Your debut poetry collection, My Soft Response to Wars. What inspired this collection?
Well, I got asked by Right Bloody North if I wanted to submit a manuscript. I said, yeah, sure. I don't know how to do that, but I will. And so over the last year and a half, we've been putting it together. And yeah, so that's it. I was asked.
And does it have a common theme throughout?
Well, the subtitle for it is, so I call it My Soft Response to the Wars, Poems of Resilience, Survival, Sacrilege, and Love is the subtitle.
Nice.
So the theme, the theme is probably surrealism is my favorite way of writing. So the poems deal a lot with childhood trauma, sexual abuse, but also I feel like it's quite funny and surreal, and even tackling that subject at times, trying to find like the absurdity of things, because it's such an absurd thing to have happen. As painful as it is, it's still ridiculously, what the fuck, know? So just trying to find the sideways way in, because one of the things, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent, one of the things I learned, because I write in surrealism and nonsense and stuff like that, I found that approach, for me anyway, allowed myself to tackle that subject. Because sometimes there's no language for it. There's no language for the pain that you're feeling. It's very difficult to actually accurately articulate how you feel and that experience on a person. And so I found, and this was where clown was really helpful, I later discovered, is that it's almost like you can, instead of saying this and happened to me, and because I always found that never had any actual emotional impact, but I could kind of go, and that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But I don't know what those words I would need to put that sensibility together.
Yeah.
So sound, a lot of this early stuff was could be considered sound poetry. And then, like I said, really absurd. And because sometimes some of this stuff happens pre-language to you. And so you really don't know how to articulate it, because you didn't know how to form what was happening in your brain. So how do you say what it is? And so I feel like nonsense, absurdity, and that kind of stuff is a really great way to begin to articulate trauma. And so that's why I do it. And I specifically always would say, if you allow your logical brain, listening to my poems sometimes, allow your logical brain to kind of turn off, and then find the meaning under the non-meaning. Get past what you think it's supposed to mean, and then just experience it. And then the meaning, which, will be experienced by each person differently, but still I have an intent. And I'm hoping that intent comes through emotionally in my performances, and hopefully with the words now too.
Would you delight us and read some of your work?
Sure. This is a poem that It's one of my favorites. It's relatively new, like last 3 or 4 years. So, and it's evolved from when I read it the very first time. It's called Sparks, and it's in the book. My soft response to the wars on right bloody north. Imagine, if you will, a microphone on a stage, and I invite you to consider it as a 21st century campfire, and all of us are sparks, waiting to be unhusked like incandescent haulers, moving faster than the speed of profound. So let's breathe hot breath upon these embers. Let's kill loneliness together, shine a light on one another, so we might recognize ourselves on the other side of this shimmering flume. Bring us your arthritic rosary and your shattered kneecaps full of prayer. Sing us your dirty tantrum, your dance hall love song. Tell us the names of the places spoken in their mother tongues, the names of the places more than 10,000 years old, the names of the places that wrestle English into submission and redraw the maps made by colonialism. Tell us about the history of the people in the photos on your refrigerator door, that 50th birthday party, and all the friends who aren't around anymore. That Bowen Island MDMA experiment, your auntie's mud wrestling championship, and that one right there of your 4-year-old niece moping in a garden full of bloom. I want to hear about the first day you started loving yourself and the next day when you didn't stop. I really need to know how you lost all your teeth and why you've fallen prey to that conspiracy of pajamas. Teach us the fable of the coughing dog and the story of the one-eyed bat that lives in your trailer park and protects the bug-eating children of your heart. Because I swear to whatever mask that you pray to, with each breath that is taken, each word that is spoken, we push back against the assimilation machine. We push back against the prefab, bleached out, white bread, blue-eyed god of monoculture. We push back against the shroud. And yeah, I'm in it for me as much as I want it for you. Maybe even more so because I'm getting older. I might die soon. You never know. You really never know. And I've got a lot of regrets. But being here with you, trying to be as human as possible, isn't one of them. If I could, I would have come to this national park of communion a hell of a lot sooner. I would have warmed my heart on your fire years before. I would have fought harder against the stapling of my tongue to the roof of my mouth by every demon that ever abused me. I would not have wandered in this world as a ghost for so long. But that's the past. And enough of that. Enough of that. Bring us your broken cowbell and your tattered flag of semaphore. This is a rescue mission. We need to free the frozen mermaid of your prairies. Find that secret world deep inside you and release your spark.
Wow, that was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Do you have another?
I do. This one was inspired. So there's a painter, Janet Strayer, who is based on Saturna Island, and she did this exhibition at the, I can't remember the specific name of it, but it's the Jewish art gallery at the Jewish Community Center. And Bonnie Nish from Pandora's Collective regularly puts together this evening, or at the time, I don't know if we, not for a while now, but where they ask poets to come in and write poems based on the paintings.
Right.
And so this is one of the poems I wrote based on Janet Strayer's paintings, and it's in the book, and it's called Into a Dying Sky. There were no goodbyes, only a death song for Pilates, sung by leg-hole traps and recycled bagpipes when they sent them all away into a dying sky. Breathless and afraid, the children of monarchs and conquistadors, awash in double chins and salivating delirium, ashamed of the tomorrow they had built for themselves. The plane would leave, but have nowhere to land, using the last of its fuel, searching for a stock market to embrace them. Instead, they found chat rooms full of stillborn David Bowie impersonators with their tongues cut out by the cult of Anonymous. And even in the face of this great betrayal, the shackle-hearted refused to pass judgment, denied the opportunity for revolution, said no to the stones begging to be thrown through stained glass windows. No one will be there to remember who murdered the world. There will only be wind and the water and the grass left to grow wild once again.
Nice.
That's that one. And this is just this poem called Nothing's Funny Anymore. That's a good response. I guess maybe it's not true. No one needed to tell the horse-faced people abused in courtrooms about what had happened. You can laugh, it's okay. It was clear to everyone with a sad neck and a brother who looked like a worn-out doghouse that things had gotten shaggy and unkempt where once there had been sharp lines. Headlines weren't needed, nor government decrees. The catalog hawkers were all long gone, and most of the autopilots laid off. It was a serious time full of knuckle-crumpling disco weavers wearing jumpsuits that still believed in Reaganomics. Obviously, a bunch of sassy fornicators took it upon themselves to bangle the witness stand in the court of public opinion and break a half dozen mastodon teeth out of the museum. No one wanted to look at them. They smelled like a tarantula dairy assassin who'd been on sick leave since the Star-Spangled Banner was a kid's song. In the end, it was to be expected. 3,000 red noses were found drowned in a Walmart kiddie pool. Some thumb-sucking Parcheesi swindler called it mass suicide, but the press ignored how much each nose had been stabbed clean through with a toothpick, as if a posse of clowns had gotten drunk on Windex and spent the night jousting on the backs of nuns. Straws were bent. Graffiti turned into corporate slogans. Chandeliers became symbols of public art. It was a sad day for moose meat and the baffled. Nothing was funny anymore.
Love that. And it was funny. Great delivery. Love it.
Thanks. Well, I think the plan is to also create an audiobook for the book so that I can use my, radio skills to put that together,
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Do you look at any of your poems and think you want to develop them a little bit more?
Well, I've done a few fringe shows now. And so some of them have just been straight poetry, just do a set, like do a 45-minute poetry set with poem after poem after poem. Mm-hmm. And then there were 2 plays, but they were infused with a lot of poetics. And what I was doing at the time was trying to mash up clown and spoken word. So I'd, be presenting stuff, and then we'd go into this clown story, and then a poem would come again, and then kind of in and out, stuff like that. So that, in the sense, I guess, would have been doing that, expanding that sort of poetic narrative. But I mean, I don't know. I won't say no, but I love movies and film, and I've, been working on screenplay or pilots and stuff like that for a TV shows. A friend and I have kind of put something together, or trying to anyway. And so, yeah, I really like that, but I wouldn't say it's absurd still, but I wouldn't say it's poetry.
How long did it take you to put your collection of poems together for this?
I guess last year and a half, maybe 2 years. Just most of them were poems that have been around for a while, and poems that I had performed quite regularly on stage. And then there are probably, maybe 6 to 10 new ones that have come up in the last year and a bit.
Mm. What
Like
does
that
a
Into a Dying Sky. That would have been a new one.
mm. What does a writing day look like for you?
Not much these days. I haven't been writing very much at all. I mean, I've been kind of editing and putting the manuscript together. It's sort of, and we had a few mashed poetic shows where I wrote a poem. So 3 or 4 poems maybe during the pandemic, but not much.
Do you find that the pandemic has hindered you in some way or added?
Not really, but honestly, I just spending most of my time being in love. And so I don't even and I mean I think about writing poems to my beloved. I just want to spend my time with her, and so that's what I've been doing. But she keeps pushing me to go get back to writing, quit being quit being around me all the time kind of thing. So I think I'm going to start taking her advice and do that. And now that the manuscript is done, I'm fairly narrow of focus. I don't like to do 3 or 4 different projects at the same time. Maybe
Right.
dabbling a little bit here and there, but now that this is done, more or less done, the book comes out, I'm told, May 26th.
Nice.
It's the kind of fingers crossed hope for it. And then I'm on to like booking online shows right now to go and format. Yeah, and then maybe I'll get back to regularly writing stuff because I'm always thinking about it, but I haven't actually sitting down and writing hasn't been a priority at all.
Mm. Well, love takes it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You are also a voice actor. What is that like?
Well, I say voice actor in there, but it's mostly as an announcer, I would say, rather than an actor. But because I work in radio and I record radio commercials,
Mm.
I often have to voice them. And I also get asked to voice stuff. So it's not just work things. So that's it. That's what it basically is just announcing radio commercials. Yeah.
Nice.
I have been auditioning. I do have an agent through the Jeff Turner group. And so I get voice auditions, but I don't know so I just kind of wing it. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do with those all the time because I'm not, even though I've studied acting and clown, I wouldn't say I'm a very good actor, but I like playing and fooling around and stuff like that. Yeah, it's hard to figure out. Yeah, I just sort of started that adventure, but I've done announcing, which is just like, reading the commercial, coming up this week at Costco, we've got 35 or something like that. That's pretty straightforward and I can do that. And some character voices and stuff like that. But so yeah, it's every day I get some scripts. I have to generally ask somebody else to come voice them, and then I coach them a bit. And then mix it up with music and sometimes sound effects, and voila.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I've done it for a long time now, so I don't find it always challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I get a little bored with it, but I love the job, and going into. I've been lucky. God, I've been lucky the pandemic. To still have a job,
Yeah.
and so I get to go into work, and I've had a fairly regular routine that has allowed for some normalcy to be maintained.
What advice do you have for anyone wanting to get into radio broadcasting?
Don't.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, do it because you love it and not because you want to make a lot of money. It's like it seems to be a lot of the entertainment, like the ones that are high up on the ladder, they make lots. They make good money. They have solid careers.
Yeah.
And and I have too. Like I haven't, and I'm sorry, I'm talking about money, but I mean, like I did it because I loved it, and then it allowed me to go and follow my poetic pursuits because I had the stability of a job, and then I could do this thing that began as a hobby and is now like a part-time career. Even though I think about poems and poetry quite a bit, so it's allowed for that, and I'm super grateful for that opportunity. But yeah, if you're getting into radio, make sure you're doing it because you love it. The reason I said don't is because so there's the companies that own the media and the stations, they're getting fewer and fewer. There's probably a half dozen now that own most of the radio stations in the country. So it's limited, so then jobs get cut, or they just, have repeaters now. So there's somebody in Trail only, I'm guessing, but somebody in Trail, they've got a morning show maybe, and you've got an afternoon show, and then the rest is all pumped in from somewhere else. And there's more and more of that. So that means there's fewer and fewer jobs. And so, I mean, if you get into a large market, as they're called, Vancouver, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Toronto, that sort of thing, there's lots of jobs. But again, make sure you get one that you want. And you don't necessarily have to know what you want to do in radio right away. One of the things I was lucky enough to do, because they had these stations, all the small town stations have their own independent thing in the 80s when I was going. And so I worked in Penticton, and I worked in Nelson, and I worked in Hope, and I learned all the different skills that you need, that you don't always necessarily get taught in school, because it's a live experience that's happening that you couldn't have predicted happen. There was one time when I was in Nelson, and they had this event called the Nelson Midsummer Bonspiel. And so it's a curling bonspiel in the middle of summer, hence the name. And the radio station was probably 5 minutes away by car to the curling rink. And that was the start, and the station was doing a live broadcast from the curling rink, but it wasn't working. They couldn't figure it out. And they were like, Randy, can you come? But I can't, because I'm on the air at the same time. And so I was like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? And I think I put on Hotel California, which is like 6.5 minutes long, or 7 minutes. And I put it on, I jumped in my car, drove up to the rink. Maybe it's less than 5 minutes. It had to be, because the song was still playing when I got back. But I got there, and we plugged it in, and it was working. And I zoomed back to the station, and I go, and now let's go. And the song was just ending. And it's like, and now let's go live to the Nelson Midsummer Bonspiel. Here's Terry Shintz and Dan Zabo. And it was like, and you wouldn't have known if you're just listening in, because the song's still playing. And then I come in, and I'm winded because I was trying to get there as fast as possible. But that was like the longest song we had in the station at the time. So
that's funny.
But they're not going to teach you that in school.
No, you have to be quick on your feet, literally.
Yeah.
I've done that. I'm a hairdresser by trade, and one time I got on the bus to go back home. And halfway home, I went, oh, shit, I forgot a client under the dryer.
No.
And so quickly I got off and took the bus back.
Oh, my gosh.
And I got there just as the dryer dinged off. She didn't know.
How did that happen? How can you forget that there's somebody under it?
I don't know. I have no idea. I just, the dryers were sort of in the back of the shop.
Okay, yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I'm done. I'm gone now.
And they were none the wiser?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And they love their hair.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. What advice do you have for anyone wanting to write poetry and get their work published?
I don't know about the published part, because for me, like I said, it's just hanging around a long time, and eventually someone will like you who wants to see you do well in a different form. And so for me, it was Brad Morden at Right Bloody North, and he had his own independent press, and then in the States there's Right Bloody Publishing, and so Right Bloody North is the Canadian arm of that, and Brad looks after that, and I was one of the first people that he asked to come and be on the press. And so it's been because of that, it wasn't really a thing that I wanted or went for, being a spoken word performer. And that was my first, and it still is my love. And I always believed in the ephemera of the moment. And it's like, if you weren't there, you missed it. And that kind of thing. And I love that. I really think that's special, to create that with a crowd or two people or one person, whoever's there. And, even though we're recording this. And so it was weird thinking of putting the stuff in a somewhat permanent state, as in a book. I don't know, other than persevere, just don't give up. And if people give you, if you get rejected, which you probably will, and they're lucky enough to give you some advice, figure out which is actual good advice and which is just them being a jerk. Because sometimes people go, oh, you shouldn't be writing and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not true. You should still be writing, figuring out a way to get it out there. And there are degrees of skill and all that sort of stuff. And not everything's going to your socks off kind of thing. But I think it's all valuable to have voices, as many as possible, out in the world, because it can only make that person who's creating it stronger, I think, by doing it. And then you go and you do it again, and then you do it again. So I think the thing is persevere and don't give up.
Your collection is about some really heavy topics. And was there any time when you're writing about things, and I'm sure you in your mind, you're sort of going back through situations and things that happened to you. Did you ever doubt yourself of, gee, should I really write this?
No, I don't think I even considered that. It was just like, get it out of me, get it out of me. And yeah.
And did you find that helped, did that change part of you?
I mean, probably, but I don't know. I thought when I was thinking about the book, I was thinking of like one of the things I acknowledge in the acknowledgements. I thank all the places that have allowed me to get up on stage. And I think it's like to be witnessed, listened to, and believed. And I think that's what those spaces can offer. And so even if I didn't know that was what I was experiencing at the time, I think that's one of the reasons I kept going back. Because, I would talk, and I wouldn't always talk about that. And I would always come around from, like I said, the side. So you wouldn't always know necessarily that I was talking about, abuse or anything like that, unless there's a few that I was very direct with that. And
right.
So I think it helped, but I didn't necessarily know. Like, it wasn't one of those things where I write it, oh, good, I feel so much better. And, but it helped. Everything moves along the way, inch by inch, kind of.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's a big movement of like 10 feet or whatever. And then you come back a little bit and, you stretch as far as you can go, and then you come back. And
yeah. Nice. Are you working on any new stuff?
No.
You're just working on being in love.
Yeah. It's a pretty easy job. I like it. My partner's pretty awesome.
Nice. I always say to my partner, I find being in love really hard because you love so much, and then at the end the person dies or you die. And I'm not really too happy about that part. So
no, that part's no good. But you know what? That was a thing that actually kept me from being in relationships a lot. I had a lot of death in my family early on, and it was really was one of the things. Another thing that was really traumatic for me, and it made being in relationships difficult because that emotional frozenness I had inside me, and terrified of feeling anything, the risk of even the possibility of them leaving by dying is too much. And I would do something to fuck it up. But my mother, and my stepdad were great examples of this, because they both had their first partners die. My dad, my birth dad, and him and Hank's wife, and they were able to move past that. And they were great examples of like being willing to love, even though you know that the other person is going to die, whether before you at the same time or whatever. And so I wrote something for Hank's eulogy, my stepdad. And what I discovered was there's this phrase that grief is the cost of love.
Yeah.
And if you're going to love somebody, that's what's going to happen. You're going to grieve their loss in some regard. They may break up with you, you may break up with them, or they're going to die. And you have to accept that. as a part of life and as a part of love. And I think that's part of being an adult, is to, stop kidding yourself, and you're not a kid, and and the world is real, and the world has all these big emotions. And, we don't educate people very well in dealing with their emotions, in expressing themselves, and especially men.
Yeah.
And it's been a long journey for me to be able to, emotionally be present and all that sort of stuff. But part of it was saying, yes, I'm going to do that, even though, at some nights I'm awake and I think about that, think about her dying, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I love her too much. I'm in it. I'm in it. I'm gonna, whatever happens, in that regard, and I'm all in.
It was really wonderful talking to you, RC. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the labs. Loved hearing you read. That was just fantastic. And great work you're doing. Lovely to connect with you. Thank you so much for coming on A Writer's Life.
Yeah, I totally appreciate it, and look forward to sharing it once you're all done in the edit room. And thank you so much.
That was R.C. Weslowski reading from his collection of poems, My Soft Response to the Wars, published by Right Bloody North. For information on where you can purchase his collection, please check the links below. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to A Writer's Life? And if you want more information about myself and my novel Secrets in the Shadows, visit my website at www.heigebohm.ca. For a kinder world, take care of each other.